Ah, nostalgia. It's a hell of a drug. It's hard to believe that it's been 23 years since that iconic and emotional intro sequence from the groundbreaking Final Fantasy VII first ushered onto the screens of the PS1, using all the power of the CD-ROM device and that console to deliver a world, story and characters like nothing we'd seen and enjoyed before. This really was a game of the generation that marked and sparked so many people's love for the PlayStation brand. What Sony was very good at was securing work from third-party companies and almost making it feel as if it was Sony's own work. But it wasn't. It was in fact a series started 10 years prior on the Nintendo Entertainment System and carried through, and probably most famously worldwide hit the big time on the Super Nintendo. What really sparked the interest from all the characters was the amazing character design and the characters and the emotional connection we had with them back in the day. From classics such as Cloud Strife, Barrett, Tifa and of course Aerith or Ares, it was an emotional journey along the way, and that intuitive battle system with the ATB was really impressive and made it more enjoyable as you flowed through the combat, even though it did suck you in quite a lot whenever you ran randomly around the parts of the map. Here though, we've finally seen the remaster and remake we've all been waiting for. That has long been touted, I think somewhere in the region of 15 years itself, that it was originally going to be made, but it's finally here in sorts on the PlayStation 4 and the PS4 Pro. This isn't an in-depth look at the title and a look back at the retrospective nostalgia look, that's going to come later on, but what this is a quick look at the demo that's now up on PSN, just what it delivers on both consoles and just how good it actually is overall. So let's not waste any time, let's pull out our swords and start slashing.
Move and we shoot!
So probably the most important thing that everyone's most interested in is just how does the game look and run. Well, this isn't using Square Enix's own proprietary engine. Instead, just like Kingdom Hearts, this is running on the Unreal Engine 4. And that means that it has a similar look and style to that game in terms of the animation characters and the skin quality in the game. The subsurface scattering is used evidently across both cutscenes and real-time gameplay, but it's a far more realistic and pinky Pixar style than what we saw in Kingdom Hearts. The character models are far more detailed, and that superb hair quality that came from Final Fantasy XI is still present here and looks great on Cloud in his moody Japanese style that really is a reimagining from the original PlayStation 1 title using the same character design creator from back in the day. But overall, the character quality is very good and very artistic. It's not realistic, it's hyper-realistic, and it exaggerates the very blocky and polygonal characters that we saw in the original PlayStation model with those pre-rendered backgrounds, and mixing FMV into the game itself very, very smoothly. Here, all the cutscenes are rendered in real time apart from the intro sequence, which is a little bit of a lower quality video than I would like on a 4K screen. Now, it isn't as terrible, don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible video quality, but it's not a great video quality, and like I say, it's only an intro sequence, so it's not going to affect the long-term enjoyment of the game, but it is an area that still lets games down when they mix and match between the two, because you can actually go into much better rendered quality, but it looks lower quality because of the video bitrate. But again, I probably digress a little more whingy than I should be. So in terms of image quality across both consoles, what are we looking at? Well, surprisingly enough, it uses Unreal Engine 4, but that doesn't mean it's sub 1080p. It is actually, in fact, fully native at 1080p on the PS4. It did use that temporal anti-aliasing solution within the Unreal Engine, and it might also use a reconstruction technique to try and improve the image and sharpen it up overall, but I've not catched any points from a few tested sections that drops below a native 1920 by 1080p. Again though, due to that TAA, it can look very soft at times, but that's again a byproduct of using that solution to smooth out edges and reduce shimmer. And it does a very good job, and visually it looks very attractive indeed. The lighting, the material quality and the artistic drive in the game is very high indeed, and that is what really impresses the most. I'm actually quite impressed by how well they've managed to reimagine the original by staying true to it, but also bringing it into the modern age, and the use of voices and dialogue now does add a lot more to the title rather than going through all the text and banter. Although the text is still there, I quite like that touch with conversations going on in the background and the text appearing on the left hand side.
You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
You really hear that?
Damn straight I do!
Get help.
Say that again!
Moving over to the PS4 Pro, what do we see? Well, a substantial increase using all of that 2.3 times increase in GPU power from 1.8 teraflops up to 4.2 teraflops. You get a resolution of 2880 by 1620. Again, looks fully native with no dynamic solution being evident here. I'm not saying it's not present, but I didn't catch any points in it. Again, it's a softer looking title than a native 4K, but it is much sharper. Now that is 2.25 times more pixels than the PS4 version, so they really have used the hardware well here, but essentially you get nothing more than a resolution bump, but it does add much more clarity to the hair, the alpha to coverage hair that's used in the title as well, and obviously the other elements like specular lighting, the bloom effects can be increased, the shadow quality and texture filtering all look much better due to that vast increase in pixel count across the game. This obviously presents you with a much sharper and cleaner image than what you get on the PS4 Pro, but neither of them look bad, as you can see with examples on the screen. It's a very good looking game, and it certainly has that balance, one foot in, one foot out, between the latest Final Fantasy titles and the old school ones, and almost a bit of an element of bouncer in there. It takes me right back to that PlayStation 2 debut with very similar looking styles, jumping over turnstiles, the train coming in, the steam, the battles. It certainly took me back to Bouncer, which was a groundbreaking title, or at least it was going to be a groundbreaking title before the PS2 launched, and it was one of those titles that really got everyone hungry for just what the PlayStation 2 would deliver. And aside the excellent use of lighting, rim lighting, shadow casting, self-shadowing and ambient occlusion overall, they've also added the excellent use of particle systems in the game. Both from the combat and collision system, when you're attacking it, it comes off the vertex points of the object being struck and hit right on point and bounces and collides across the area, to the materia system and the particles of fading magic and enemies just disappearing after being defeated. And they've added a physics element. There's lots of destruction and movement, and even some soft body, or at least an element of soft body physics in some of the impacts and collisions in the game. I'm very impressed with certain elements that have been added here, so I'm looking forward to seeing just how the overall game in the first chapter that will release in April will actually deliver. But first signs are very good, and I'm looking forward to seeing much more. In terms of the gameplay, it's got a good mixture between the old school and the new school, so you've got easy, normal and classic combat systems. The classic and easy are literally that. The classic basically means it attacks on its own without your input, and you just choose the attack, spells and items to use throughout. I would recommend normal because that's far more fun and a good mixture between the old school and the new, and far more like modern Final Fantasy titles. Here though, the team have used the consoles very well indeed, really maximised the performance here, but unfortunately that doesn't mean that you're going to get a 60 FPS mode here as we saw in the previous Final Fantasy titles. Instead, performance is capped at 30 FPS with VSync fully engaged on both machines. And that means that performance is pretty boring to talk about, but excellent for you guys playing the game. Yes, if you're diving into this on both the PS4 or the PS4 Pro, what you're greeted with is a fully locked, fully V-synced and consistently smooth 30 FPS. No frame pacing issues, no skipping, no bouncing, no jumping. It's absolutely rock solid on both versions with no issues at all whatsoever. Now, there was a small issue that I had on the PS4 Pro, but I think this came from the fact that I actually resumed rather than restarted the console. So I got a couple of skips every now and then on this test, so I had to go back and retest it from a full reboot, and all those issues were removed. So again, it's nowhere near as bad as what we see on the Xbox quite consistently with that resumed state, but it's always best, I think, if you're absolutely affected by small hiccups in performance, always restart your console before you start a game that you don't want to get affected by performance. Like I say, it's very minor, but here you get occasional skips into 33, 50 and then 16 milliseconds, which it's very hard to spot. In fact, outside of this frame graph, I doubt anyone will really feel it, but it is definitely there. If you sometimes resume from multiple games that are going in and out of memory, you can have these issues. It's very minor. I repeated my tests. I'm only showing it here for clarity, but it's not a huge detriment to the title overall. Aside that, both versions run completely rock solid at 30 FPS. Now the last thing, which is kind of pointless, but you can also turn off the 4K resolution on the PS4 Pro. If you set it to 1080p, put it to a 1080p screen, the game does render at 1080p, not 2880 by 1620. But because there's no performance impact at all in the title, there's no point in doing this, but if you did want to do it, then you can. And that really is it. I mean, overall, the game is excellent. I think they've done a superb job of capturing both the historical and the future style of gameplay. It's an excellent hybrid between the old school and the new school, more the modern Final Fantasy and the old school Final Fantasy merged into a combination that really does work. And overall, it's an impressive trip down memory lane that doesn't hark too much on that nostalgic value and really reinvents it for the modern age. It's enjoyable, exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing the final release in April, where I'll be covering it in much more depth. Anyway, that's it. I'm out. I hope you enjoyed this fast look, and I'll catch you on the next one.
I can taste. Hurry it up.
Scared, huh?
More like excited. I've been dreaming about this for years.
Heads up, boys. The engine's